You think you're just entering a room. You smile. You greet. You exchange words that mean nothing. But beneath that surface, a war begins. Not of swords or guns, but of glances, pauses, and tone. Every nod, every silence, every half second of hesitation becomes a move on an invisible chessboard. Most never see it. They call it conversation, socializing, being polite. But what they don't understand is this. Every human interaction carries a silent negotiation of power. When you shake someone's hand, there's pressure in the grip, not by accident, but by instinct. When you meet someone's eyes and they look away first, your mind records it. Submission. When someone interrupts you mid-sentence, it isn't random, it's a psychological probe, a test. And you fail that test every time you smile to ease the tension, apologize for nothing, or shrink your tone to sound pleasant. Because in this world, communication isn't about words. It's about positioning. We are trained to believe that dominance is loud, that power shouts. But the truth is darker. Real power whispers. It doesn't assert, it anchors. It doesn't react, it observes. And that's what most people never learn. Power is not in what you say. It's in what you withhold. Think about it. The most powerful person in any room rarely speaks first. They don't rush to fill silence. They use it. Because silence isn't absence. It's gravity. It pulls people toward it, demanding answers, approval, attention. But you've been taught the opposite. You were told to be agreeable, engaging, nice. You were told to smooth over awkwardness, to make others comfortable. What they didn't tell you is, the one who feels most comfortable first loses. In psychology, this is known as dominance calibration, an unconscious process where people test each other's emotional stability to determine hierarchy. It happens everywhere: offices, families, relationships, even friendships. You can feel it when someone subtly mocks you and waits to see if you'll laugh. When they give a backhanded compliment, you're actually smarter than you look. When they arrive late and expect you to wait without complaint. Each act is a move, a calculated bid for control. And when you ignore it, when you let it slide, you teach them one lesson: they can get away with it. Here's the cruel truth. Most people don't consciously decide to dominate. They simply react to weakness. The human brain is wired to sense social submission like a predator senses prey. It's not evil. It's instinct. When you show excessive apology, when you rush to explain yourself, when you overlaugh to defuse tension, you leak power. And those leaks don't go unnoticed. They're studied. They're cataloged. They're used. That's the war. The war you never see. You might ask, why does it matter? I'm not trying to dominate anyone. But here's what you misunderstand. You don't have to try. The game happens whether you want it or not. Even the act of avoiding the game makes you a participant on the losing side. The truth is, humans live by invisible hierarchies, subtle but absolute. No matter how civilized we pretend to be, we still rank each other instinctively. Who leads? Who follows? Who yields? Who commands? Look closer at your workplace. The loud one isn't the leader. The calm one is. The person everyone consults before deciding. That's who holds the real authority. Power doesn't announce itself. It's recognized. And the irony? You've likely mistaken agreeableness for virtue your whole life, thinking you were being good. But goodness without boundaries isn't virtue, it's surrender. Let's dissect this deeper. Each time you walk into a social interaction, your subconscious scans the environment for cues of safety and threat. The limbic system, the primitive brain, activates subtle defense mechanisms. Tone shifts, micro-expressions, even breathing patterns. You think you're relaxed, but your body is already negotiating survival. When someone raises their voice, your pupils constrict. When someone questions your opinion, your cortisol spikes. When someone ignores your message, your ego translates that silence as rejection. And before you even realize it, you start adjusting, softening tone, shrinking body posture, filtering words, not to connect, but to protect. That's how dominance is lost, not in confrontation, but in micro-compromises. Small self-betrayals you justify as keeping the peace. There's a Machiavellian truth here that most can't bear to face. Every interaction has a winner and a loser, even love. Not in cruelty, but in influence. In who gets emotionally adjusted to whom. In who sets the tone of the conversation. The person who makes the other change their energy wins. Think back. That one friend who always makes you wait? That colleague who sighs when you speak, making you second-guess your point? That partner who uses silence to punish instead of words to communicate? They've mastered social warfare, not because they're smarter, but because they're colder. Power doesn't come from aggression. It comes from emotional neutrality, the ability to observe without reacting. Because reaction is ownership, once they can make you react, they own your emotions. And this is where most people lose the game. They think reacting proves authenticity, but in psychology, reaction is possession. It reveals that the other person has entered your emotional territory. Control isn't about being robotic. It's about knowing when to withhold the currency of your attention. Because attention is energy, and energy is power. The ones who can make you angry, make you dance. The ones who can't, start fearing your calm. That's the beginning of the silent war. You lose the moment you speak just to fill silence. You win the moment you make silence your ally. Because silence, when mastered, becomes dominance in its purest form. No threats. No noise. Just presence. And presence is the modern battlefield, unseen, unspoken, yet absolute. You think dominance begins with posture, voice, or confidence. It doesn't. It begins with perception. Before you even speak, people are reading your energy, the subtle signals your nervous system broadcasts without consent. Are you relaxed or restless? Do your eyes dart or linger? Do your gestures command space? Or do they collapse inward as if apologizing for existing? This is the language of the subconscious, the dialect of hierarchy, and every human speaks it fluently, even if they deny it. What they don't tell you is this. Humans are obsessed with control, not because they crave power, but because they fear uncertainty. Every social exchange is an attempt to manage uncertainty. Who will lead the narrative? Who will define the tone? Who will make who feel smaller or larger? That's the hidden game behind every conversation. A polite duel wrapped in small talk. You notice it at dinner tables. The person who interrupts to clarify what you meant. In meetings, the one who always concludes your sentences for you. In friendships, the subtle dismissal, the smirk that erases your confidence in one glance. They're not random. They're power tests. Psychologists call them dominance gestures, instinctive attempts to gauge control. You can spot them everywhere once you learn to see. Cutting into your story with advice you didn't ask for. Speaking slower than you to make you rush. Repeating your words, but slightly altering them to claim ownership of your thought. Most people respond by shrinking. They fidget. They laugh it off. They tell themselves, it's not worth the argument. But the truth is, every ignored slight becomes a signal of permission. And permission is the soil where manipulation grows. Here's the brutal paradox. The more you try to prove you're harmless, the more people sense weakness. The calmer you appear under tension, the more people sense strength. Power, in psychology, is not defined by aggression. It's defined by composure. The one who keeps their internal temperature steady dictates the pace of the encounter. You've seen this instinctively. When two people argue, the one who raises their voice first loses authority. Because emotion betrays exposure, it signals that someone else has penetrated your calm. That's why truly powerful people rarely rush. They know panic is contagious, but so is poise. Here's something darker. People don't just test dominance to control you. They do it to feel safe. Because if they can locate your weakness, they can predict your behavior. Predictability means safety. That's why manipulators prefer emotional people. They're readable, moldable, and easy to trigger. But the emotionally disciplined are terrifying. You can't bribe them with validation. You can't guilt them with silence. You can't bait them into reaction. Their neutrality creates unease. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they choose when to reveal. That choice is power. Think of emotional energy like a currency. Every reaction you give, anger, explanation, defense, is a payment. Every silence, Every pause, every calm observation is an investment, and like any economy, those who spend impulsively end up in debt. Those who manage emotion with strategy accumulate wealth, the wealth of psychological control. And here's the cruel irony. Most of the people who dominate you socially are broke inside. They rely on external control because they can't master internal chaos. Their manipulations are survival, not strategy. That's why when you stop reacting, they start unraveling. You cut off their oxygen. You collapse their illusion of superiority. You'll notice it the moment it happens. They'll over-explain, over-joke, or suddenly accuse you of being cold because they're not used to losing control of your emotions. Let's talk about the hidden architecture of dominance. The three pillars that govern all social hierarchies: attention, framing, and timing. One, attention. Where attention flows, power goes. Whoever controls attention controls emotion. If they can make you focus on defending yourself, you're already below them. That's why narcissists bait, to drag your attention into their orbit. To win, you must become the architect of your own focus. Decide what deserves your attention and starve the rest. 2, framing. Every conversation is a battle for narrative control. The one who defines the meaning of events wins. When someone criticizes you, don't defend, reframe. Turn accusation into observation. If they say, "You're too sensitive," respond, "Or maybe you've grown too numb." That's frame control, shifting from defense to authorship. 3, timing. Patience is the most underestimated form of dominance. People rush to prove they're right, but power waits. In every exchange, the one who pauses before responding holds the higher ground, because timing creates tension, and tension is leverage. The world bends to the rhythm of the one who moves slowest without losing certainty. These three forces intertwine in every human duel. Watch a manipulator and you'll see. They command your attention by provoking emotion. They seize the frame by redefining truth. They master timing by letting silence work as intimidation. But when you see it, truly see it, you take back the battlefield. You stop reacting. You start choosing. And suddenly, the manipulator feels exposed because you've become unpredictable. The paradox of power is this: it doesn't come from domination. It comes from composure under attack. You don't control others. You control the emotional climate of the interaction. And that changes everything. There's a moment, the first time you sense this, when you feel a strange calm, a shift. You no longer rush to defend, to explain, to appease. You let people project, accuse, and twist, and you just observe. It's not arrogance. It's mastery. Because when you understand that every social exchange is psychological chess, you stop moving like a pawn. You start playing like a strategist. And the strategist never moves first. He moves last. Not out of fear, but out of precision. They don't betray you when you're weak.
They betray you the moment you no longer need them. That's the secret rhythm of betrayal. It doesn't emerge from hatred, but from comparison. When someone realizes your light now burns brighter than theirs, they feel small in its glow. And rather than learning from it, they decide to dim it. It's a survival instinct dressed as morality. They convince themselves you've changed, that success has corrupted you, that you've forgotten who you are. But what they really mean is, you're no longer beneath me, and I can't stand it. Watch how they smile when you fail, the subtle relief in their tone. That's not empathy. It's equilibrium being restored. They need you to stay slightly broken so their own lives make sense. Because to them, your progress isn't growth. It's a threat to the hierarchy that once made them feel safe. Music swells, faint whispers of betrayal echo. The Machiavellian mind doesn't resent this. It expects it, because it understands a brutal truth. Loyalty is not moral, it's situational. People stay loyal when they need you. You make them feel important. You serve a role in their story. Remove those three, and you'll watch loyalty dissolve like smoke. That's why the wise don't confuse friendship with alliance. An alliance is built on mutual benefit. Friendship is built on emotion, and emotion is volatile. Machiavellian Law #5. To stay unbetrayed, remove the opportunity, not the emotion. Stop testing hearts. Start testing incentives. Because betrayal doesn't begin in the heart, it begins in the equation. Shift tone. Colder, sharper, with psychological depth. Ask yourself, why does betrayal hurt so deeply? Because it violates the illusion of safety. You believe the bond was real, not transactional. And that belief blinded you. The betrayer, on the other hand, never saw the world through your sentiment. They were quietly measuring, calculating, waiting. And when the scales tipped in your favor, they acted to restore balance. But here's the paradox. You need betrayal. Without it, you stay naive. Without it, you keep trusting the wrong people. Every betrayal is a forced awakening, a brutal teacher that sharpens your instincts. The pain burns the illusions away until all that's left is clarity. And from that clarity, you rise colder, quieter, more precise. Music fades into silence, replaced by the faint ticking of a clock. Time is the ultimate lie detector. You don't expose people, time does. All you have to do is observe. The loyal stay consistent. The opportunists grow restless. The betrayers, they reveal themselves in subtle impatience. So learn to wait, in silence, without warning them. Let their own ambition unmask them. Because betrayal isn't your downfall, it's your initiation. The moment you stop expecting loyalty and start commanding respect. Machiavellian lesson. Every betrayal refines you. Every loss of trust forges your wisdom. And wisdom, not love, is what keeps your throne standing. When you've been betrayed, something inside you dies. But what's more important? Something new is born. You begin to see life as it truly is, not as you wished it to be. You stop expecting fairness. You stop searching for loyalty. You stop assuming that good intentions will protect you. Because now you understand the world doesn't reward purity. It rewards precision. This is your rebirth. The person you were, naive, trusting, emotionally open, couldn't survive the upper levels of power. That version of you belonged to a smaller world. But now you've seen the hidden machinery, the part of human nature most people are too scared to face. And once you've seen it, you can never unsee it. A slow heartbeat begins again, calm but resolute. Here's what you realize. Betrayal didn't destroy you. It refined you. You were gold all along. The betrayal was just the fire that burned the impurities away. It stripped away the illusions, the wishful thinking, the weakness disguised as empathy. It taught you something only the betrayed can understand. That control is not about manipulation. It's about clarity, knowing who deserves your silence, knowing when to disappear, knowing when to act, and when to let them destroy themselves. Music deepens, a slow, cinematic pulse. Most people respond to betrayal emotionally. They lash out. They seek revenge. They want to be seen as right. But the strategist does something far colder and far wiser. They go quiet. They observe. They let the betrayer's guilt, paranoia, and pride dismantle them from within. Because Machiavellian power is never loud. It's inevitable. The silent mind always wins, because silence reveals who's truly in control. Machiavellian law #6. Never fight to prove your innocence. Let their conscience be the battlefield. You don't need to prove who you are. Time will do that for you. Their lies will rot under their own weight, while your restraint becomes your weapon. The betrayed who learns control becomes untouchable. The tone grows darker, more intimate, philosophical. You start building boundaries not from anger, but from understanding. You no longer chase closure. You create it through distance. You no longer seek validation. You become your own witness. Every time you walk away quietly instead of explaining yourself, you reclaim power. Every time you let your success speak instead of your words, you shift the balance. That's what rebirth looks like. Cold, silent, strategic. Music swells, haunting, powerful, reverent. And the next time someone betrays you, you won't fall apart. You'll watch, detached, analytical, as their own patterns expose them. You'll no longer see betrayal as tragedy, but as data. Each cut becomes a lesson. Each deception, a map of human weakness. You start seeing through people, not because you want to, but because betrayal has given you X-ray vision. You can spot insecurity in flattery, jealousy in silence, control, and kindness. You now walk among manipulators, untouched, because you've studied their language. And you speak it fluently. Machiavellian lesson. The wise do not fear betrayal. They study it until it becomes their armor. Fade to black. A single line appears on screen as the music fades. You are not cold, you are clear. They say betrayal breaks you. But the truth is, it graduates you. It moves you from the emotional world to the strategic one, from reacting to orchestrating. Because once you understand betrayal, you stop trying to avoid it and start using it. You begin to realize that betrayal is not chaos. It's communication. It's a signal that power has shifted and someone felt it. When people turn on you, it's not because you've done something wrong. It's because your evolution has threatened their illusion of control. They can't handle that you no longer need their approval, that your validation now comes from clarity, not connection. So they sabotage, they gossip, they distort, all in a desperate attempt to pull you back into the version of yourself that served them. But you've outgrown the role. You've become the observer of your own play, and that's when the audience stops clapping. Music builds, haunting piano notes, distant thunder. Here's the Machiavellian paradox. If you rise high enough, betrayal becomes inevitable. Because people don't attack you when you're wrong. They attack you when you're free. Freedom is the greatest offense to the insecure. It reminds them of their own chains. And instead of breaking them, they try to bind you back into theirs. But here's the quiet victory they never expect. You no longer need to fight them. Because the moment you stop reacting, the war ends. Control is no longer about domination. It's about detachment. And detachment isn't indifference. It's mastery. You don't hate them. You simply stop bleeding for them. Silence. The music fades to an intimate hum, voice alone. You used to think loyalty meant standing by people no matter what. Now you understand, loyalty without alignment is self-destruction. You can love someone and still refuse their influence. You can forgive them and still never open the same door again. That's not coldness. That's strategy. Because power isn't measured by how many people you control. It's measured by how few people can control you. The rhythm tightens, one beat per line. Most will never reach this stage. They'll keep explaining themselves to those who already decided not to listen. They'll keep seeking closure from the same hands that caused their wounds. They'll keep calling it love when it's just dependency wearing perfume. But not you. You've crossed the invisible threshold, the point where peace matters more than being understood. You don't need to be liked. You don't need to be chosen. You just need to remain unreadable. Because the moment they can't predict you, they can't manipulate you. A cinematic pause. A single breath before the final reveal. The true master of betrayal does not fear deception. They harness it. They become so emotionally disciplined, so internally anchored, that even lies become information. Even rejection becomes redirection. Even pain becomes instruction. And through that transformation, something sacred happens. You stop chasing power and become it, not through control, but through self-containment. Not through intimidation, but through clarity. Not through words, but through presence. You don't announce strength anymore. You embody it quietly. The kind that unsettles manipulators because they can't locate your weakness. The kind that makes betrayers nervous because they realize you are no longer playing their game. Music swells, a final crescendo, almost divine in tone. So when they turn on you next time, when the whispers start again, when you feel that familiar sting of disappointment, don't collapse. Smile, because betrayal is proof that you've outgrown the room. And growth, by nature, threatens those who prefer walls. You're not losing people. You're shedding versions of yourself that no longer fit your evolution. Final tone, calm, soft, philosophical. Here's the final Machiavellian truth. You don't escape betrayal by avoiding people. You escape it by understanding them, deeper than they understand themselves. And that's when you stop asking, why did they hurt me? And start whispering, thank you for revealing who I was never meant to be. Because that's the quiet apex of power, the moment betrayal no longer defines you. It refines you, and you rise unshaken, untouchable, unseen, the one they can no longer betray. The screen fades to black. A single closing line appears in white text. Power doesn't seek revenge. It evolves.